Podcast, and thanks for being with us. I've been looking forward to this conversation because, of course, I need to manage stress in my own life, and I bet our listeners feel the same. Welcome, Drake.
Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, and yeah, of course, I'm biased, but I actually think that this is one of the most important areas for us to focus on, each in our own individual life. If we really want to make a difference in the world, we have to develop the ability to calm down internally so we can develop that clarity.
Wow. That is so true. And it's wonderful to have you here on the MACC podcast. And we're also lucky to have you with members at MACC Summit 2025. And looking forward to that and excited to talk to you today. Drake, you teach stress release and team connection, which I love the connection between those two. Will you tell us a little bit about your journey to what you do today? Help our listeners get to know you a little bit. What drew you to this focus on wellness?
Well, it's so interesting how it goes. You go through life thinking you don't know what you want to do, and then all of a sudden you get to a certain point and you realize that you already knew all along. And so for me, I'm 60 years old, and I first came in contact with meditation practice when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And so I really was really sort of super focused in it, like very, very early, studying as much as I could about it. And so I've been doing stress reduction practice, and trying to learn about stress throughout my life. And of course, you don't really get that intensely into something like that, something that esoteric. I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in the city of Chicago. I don't even think anyone had even heard of the term meditation that I knew, but I just happened to come across it, and then I just got really focused right away. And again, I had things going on in my life that were troubling me to the point that it made me really hungry for something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, and again, that's really for me kind of the framing that I really put in stress reduction in general. Really coming from this difficult situation really ended up being an affirmation for me. I ended up really recognizing that being in that challenging situation really put me in a situation that I had to thrive in order to really get through it.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that we're kind of like that collectively right now. This time right now, I really feel that it's a time for each of us in our own worlds to really get the relationship to learning how to calm ourselves down, and as a result, become a little bit more hopeful.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Let's start with the premise that individuals and organizations have problems, of course, right? Problems and challenges. Those are leading to stress and friction. Like we're in this sector, we're stressed out for a reason, right? But your idea about how we can thrive during this sort of chaos that we're existing in, what does that mean to thrive amidst the challenges? And, sometimes when you're in it, all you see and feel is the challenge, like it can consume you.
Yes. Well, I think first of all, recognizing this is an individual element with each one of us, and it's not just at work. This is actually in our home lives as well. So, all the people, our coworkers and all the people that we work with, we all go home and we have family members who are feeling a lot of stress, or maybe our kids. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is really recognizing we need to develop with a relationship in a whole way, not just compartmentalizing our work life, but developing skills that help us in all facets of our life. Mm-hmm. And so the way that we end up recognizing it is that we end up feeling despair and resentment when we feel like we don't have any power to affect change.
Right.
But when we realize the challenge really is as much how we feel about how we're feeling about the situation as the situation itself. So we have primary and secondary emotions. Primary emotion is, for instance, when you feel anxious about something. A secondary emotion is when you feel anxious about feeling anxious.
Oh, I've been there.
And that's when it ramps up into a panic attack or a major depressive episode. It just bounces off it. So what we have the ability to do is shift our relationship to how we feel about our feelings, which actually gives us a lot more sense of hope in dealing with the challenge. I mean, if you learn, if we can develop the ability to manage our anxiety, well, the world is not nearly as intimidating once we learn how to be not intimidated by anxiety.
That is so true. And I felt that myself, like if you have an anxious period and then afterwards your perspective is so different than how you felt when you were feeling, in the midst of that.
Yes. Well, the great jazz musician Miles Davis said that the key to music is the space in between the notes.
Mm.
And so, it's not just that we're having tough times at work, or and part of it is not hiding from it. This is not about having a Pollyanna approach. When we're talking about thriving, it's not about hiding. So what I'm saying is that hey, the reality is that we're overworked, we're in challenging situations, we're being asked to do more than we need to do. We may be concerned about issues of things like funding, all kinds of stuff are going on.
Mhm.
And so at the same time, though, what tends to happen is it's not just happening while we're at work, it's in the back of our mind as we're driving home from work. It's
Mhm.
in our mind when we're laying in bed that night. And so if we learn how to handle those spaces in between better, it makes us have makes us much more effective when we actually get to the challenge itself.
Yeah, I love that. That is the truth. Really, I think like one of the hardest things to address is that there's just so many challenges in our nonprofit sector that they do feel out of our control. We're operating in dysfunctional systems, and we're
Yes.
working to change those systems, but they're not easy to change. Like it's a long game, but we're
Yes.
living it like day by day, um, and I think we're all feeling this way, like right now. Like, how can we keep going in healthy ways when it feels like some days it feels like things are not getting better for our sector?
Yes. Well, the key is really recognizing that we don't have to do as much as we think. So what I'm saying is that if you can imagine a boat with the water right up to the lip of the boat, if it just gets a little bit higher, it'll spill into the boat and swamp the boat. But the difference between that happening is actually not that much. And so if we can reduce our stress a little bit, we can actually make a big change. And so what I'm suggesting is, and by the way, on my Touching the Edge YouTube station, there's a
Mhm.
video that speaks to all this that happens to be up today. It's called Falling in Love. So what I'm saying is like if we find the ability to fall in love with today, not a hypothetical day,
Oh,
we if we recognize our mission is to manage our stress that we're having today, not that we have from all our history or what we're going to deal with all the way in the future, but how can I feel a little bit better today? It actually becomes more manageable. So what I'm saying is, if we can just feel a little bit better today, we can make a big difference.
yeah. So you're managing the overwhelm, basically, right?
Exactly.
You're living in the present, managing that sense of overwhelm.
Yeah, and the other element we want to recognize is part of what's going on. We have what we're doing on at the surface. We're going to work, we're working, we're managing the stress, but we also have a subliminal level of how we're sort of relating to the situation. And what tends to happen is right underneath the level of our conscious attention, we tend to be catastrophizing.
Yes, yes, 100% yes.
Yes. And so that catastrophizing is that little bit, if we can interrupt the catastrophizing, which we have control over,
Hmm.
we end up finding that we have more options. So and by the way, part of this is really finding a way because it's not just about our own internal stress, it's about team building. It's about finding a way because right now fracturing is so likely, it's easy to get into conflict with someone that you have at work. We're all dealing with so much.
Right.
And so we also want to be figuring out ways to deal with our collective stress better, us as individuals, but we can also do things collectively that kind of help us all to kind of reduce our stress by finding ways of connecting rather than always being in opposition.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm glad you mentioned the video. And for MACC members who are listening in, we'll make sure we grab a link to that and share it in our next digest to you.
Thank
Um,
you very much.
yeah, that I think that sounds great. Drake, you talk about taking the heat off and turning down that volume on stress. Um,
Yes.
what? Okay, so you can recognize that it's happening, but what are some effective ways to do that? Because I know the struggle is real for a lot of us.
Yes. Well, I mean, there are so many ways. Part of it is recognizing we have so many tools, not just, and that they're easy.
Hmm.
So part of the situation is that we have so much going on that we just get to a point that I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is that when we recognize, if we can break it down into smaller bites and activate these tools. So one of the elements I suggest to people to do is that we have to develop the relationship to learning how we relate to stress. We each have a different style of learning, and we each have different styles of reducing our stress. And so when we start paying attention to ourselves, we have to understand no one taught us how to relax. We have to learn how to relax.
Oh my
It's
God.
didactic.
That
You have
is
to
so
teach,
true.
you know. And so one of the things, and this is something simple, and by the way, when we do these things, we can learn things right now that make a difference today. That's how powerful this is. So one of the things I suggest to my clients, and I want to suggest it to everyone listening right now, is to write down a list of 10 state changers. A list of 10 state changers. Your state is the background sort of emotional ambience that you're experiencing right now. It's like having a theme song. You know what I mean? If you got some really, like, imagine it's a really cool coffee shop. You see someone come in. What's the theme song they're playing? If it's like a nice jazz, relaxing, feels good. But if it's like foreboding organs, it might be like a horror movie. You know what I mean?
Da da
We got,
da.
exactly. If we got that music playing in the back of our mind, is obviously it's not going to go well. We have to learn how to shift it. It's almost like having different colored bubbles floating around, mystical bubbles. So say there's a red bubble, and all of a sudden you're focused on it. Now all of a sudden, instead of looking at it, you're now inside it. Everything is colored red. We have to find a way to pop that bubble. So the state changers are ways that you at this point recognize that work for you to reduce your stress. So there's examples. So immersive practice, taking a hot bath with Epsom salt is a state changer. The Epsom salt contains magnesium. Most of us are magnesium deficient. If you do things like that on a regular basis, gradually your stress will begin to diminish. Taking a walk, if you get to the point where you take a half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour walk every day, that is a state changer. That is a state changer. And equally effective, by the way, as taking an antidepressant.
I've heard that.
Yes. Another state changer, and don't get me wrong, this is not necessarily fun. It's immersive to the point that we get out of our head and into our bodies.
Out of our head and into our bodies.
Right. Like, so if you jump into an ice cold lake, I can guarantee you're not going to be thinking about politics for a moment.
You are correct.
Right. I always joke like this. This is my thing. I want to be in the Avengers. The car, like the movie, the Marvel stuff. I want to be in the Avengers. I want my superhero name to be called Middle Aged Man. And so I'm going to be sitting on the couch. My suit is not going to. It's going to. We all wear these form-fitting suits. Mine is not going to look as good as everybody else's. But my superpower is being calm and slightly optimistic.
I love it.
And so that's what happens when we interrupt those states. So other ones, cooking can be a state changer. Caring for an animal you love can be a state changer. Exercising, if you're not ego exercising, if you're working out to your body and not towards your ego, it can be a state changer. So I'm asking people to sit down and just write down a list of 10 of them. And every time you feel that anxiety, activate one of those state changers. There's a lot of easy ones too, micro practices that we can do throughout the day. So a simple state changer, and here's another one I'll give, is it's a micro game. You simply ask yourself, how am I winning? And you say 4 ways out loud how you're winning right now. And when you do that, you'll find that your state will shift.
Wow, I'm learning so much. State changers, getting out of our heads and into our bodies.
Yes.
Listing these state changers, looking for these micro practices, considering how am I winning? I'm taking furious notes here because these already make me feel like I have some control over managing all of these outside influencers that are triggering my stress.
Yes. Well, what we want to recognize, and again, if you have a big enough lever, you can move the whole wide world. We want to recognize that we're not just doing this for ourselves to feel better. We're doing this because we care about what's going on.
Yep.
It really comes down to you're either going to be reactive or responsive.
Mm-hmm.
If you're responsive, you're becoming more yourself. If you're reactive, you're becoming less yourself. And so that's part of the opportunity of thriving. We have this opportunity right now to really get in contact with who we really are. And that means being your best self. Who you are authentically is your best self.
No, that's beautiful.
You know?
I am really looking forward to having you with MACC members at our upcoming summit. And for folks listening, this is our annual convening of MACC members. And Drake, you are presenting to a group of nonprofit human service professionals at this summit about these things, about stress reduction, about conflict resolution. So I'm just curious, can you give us a little teaser? Like, what can we expect from that experience with you?
Well, first of all, it's going to be interactive. It won't just be me talking at the group. We're going to be creating what I call a healing circle. Now, a healing circle, when you have a healing circle, there is no hierarchy to the circle. So what I'm saying is I'm going to be presenting and I'm going to be framing things in a certain way. We're going to be learning techniques that if you're going to be able to utilize that day to make a difference that day, that if you continue with those simple techniques, you can make a transformation in your life in that one meeting. And so what I'm saying is at the same time, we're going to be sharing our relationship to how we each manage stress. What I'm saying is that we all know more than we think we know. It's just applying what we do know. And so we'll be sharing those kind of elements. The other element, too, that we want to recognize is that part of where we find stress reduction is in community. We are not meant to be alone. We are meant to be in community. And so having that healing circle there, is going to help us to activate community within the organization. And that's also vitally important. And we're going to have a good time. This is not like eating soda crackers on a desert island, you know what I mean? This is actually, no, this is juicy. This is thriving, is having a better time in the situation that we're in. It's recognize that what tends to happen is we kind of see ourselves in a worst case scenario. I want to change that framing. We're a best case scenario. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm hiding from all that's going on, and believe me. And again, it comes back to my origins. This did not come because I was having a good time. We are legitimate in being upset, but we want to recognize that just because we're right doesn't mean that we're not wrong. And if we get to the point that we activate self-injurious behavior because of what's going on in the world, that's where we're stepping into the reactivity.
Yeah.
And so,
ding, ding, ding. I think you just hit the nail on the head right there.
Yes.
So
so that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a good time that day. We're all going to learn something. It's a breathing. I'm not saying people are going to learn from me. I'm excited to learn from everybody there. We're going to have a good time. And after we leave there, we're going to have a palpable sense of difference. And that's what we can.
Wonderful. Well, not all of our listeners are going to be able to join you for that session, although I'm sure they're all going to wish they could. So for the benefit of everyone, let's chat a little bit about, in the workplace, which, you get all these individuals who are processing things in all their own ways. And as you said, we haven't really been taught on how to deal with all of this. So in the workplace, how can we incorporate mindful sort of movement and practices and all of this to calm our nervous system when we're working together?
Well, it's kind of like this. Imagine you're at a party or something like that, and the person that you're talking to says something that you happen to find reprehensible, right? I know it's hard to imagine that in today's world. Now, what I'm saying is that if, say, you're sitting in a couch as someone had left a lit cigarette in at some point, and all of a sudden the couch bursts into fire. My suggestion is that no matter what you're talking about, the conversation is not the highest priority. Putting the fire out is the highest priority. So what I'm saying is that even when we're in the workplace, we have to recognize that when we're feeling triggered and inflamed, that cooling our nervous system is what we need to do first before we go to this other situation. And that happens by working a template that we activate before we even get there. We tend to have fire drills, if you in different places. Now, it's not a good idea to have a fire drill when the fire is happening. We want to have done the fire drill before the fire happens. And so just as in this situation, we want to begin to activate simple practices on a regular basis that help us to be less likely to get triggered when we're in that situation.
Mm.
One of those is what I call the de-escalation template. Now, the de-escalation template, so one of the ways part of how we want to thrive is we want to get better at de-escalating conflict. And that's not just at the workplace. I mean, you might have someone cut you off at a road rage incident that happened on the way to work.
Sure.
So we want to get de-escalation skills that travel with us wherever we are. And so the de-escalation template, I just want to suggest as an example, if the person who you are working to de-escalate conflict with feels like you're trying to de-escalate them, they will become elevated. People don't like someone trying to de-escalate them.
That's true too.
Nothing upsets someone else more than having someone say, calm down. Okay. So what I'm saying is, though, if you can do something that surprises the person, they will be more likely to shift out of that conflict consciousness. And we do that by getting in contact with ourselves. So it's very simple. It's 4 simple steps. We slow the breathing down. Tongue is in contact with the roof of the mouth. We slow the breathing down in through the nostrils and out. We drop awareness into our lower abdomen. There's a spot an inch below the navel, half an inch in. It's called the hara, Hara. We become aware of that spot and our breathing at the same time. Now, one of the things that happens when we have conflict is we tend to have tunnel vision with the person we're having conflict.
Mm-hmm.
That tunnel vision actually blocks us from solutions. So we want to widen our awareness and notice subtlety. Your ability to notice subtlety in the midst of intensity is self-mastery. So when you notice the traffic going by while you're breathing and having your awareness in your lower abdomen, then all of a sudden things begin to open up. And the last part of it is to be aware of the center of your chest. We want to imagine that there's a light shining in every direction at once. And that is just simply saying the phrase, I am. So we slow the breathing down, drop awareness in our lower abdomen, notice subtlety, bring awareness into our chest, and just say the phrase, I am. And so what ends up happening then is that we end up having solutions that we don't expect that pop up. And this cheat sheet for that, the quick part, is just to say the phrase I am and notice anything subtle in the situation. So that's a very simple template that will help us manage conflict better. Now, a lot of times when we have meetings, say we have a meeting where we know there's a likelihood that it could be a tense meeting, we do some simple things to make it go better for us. For instance, bringing in a bottle of water with you and making sure you're sipping water while you're having the meeting. Even having people drinking water generally in a meeting is actually going to calm the meeting. So those are the elements. There's a lot of other simple elements that you can do. By the way, activating your posture 2 to 3 minutes a day in the morning will significantly shift your relationship to the day. And going to the bathroom and activating your posture for about 2 minutes before a meeting, and just taking some water and just putting it on your face will have you much more likely to not inflame the meeting, to make it something that you're helping to ground rather than making it become more negative.
Right. I thank you so much for sharing these. And it is amazing, these just tools and ways you can prepare yourself for your environment and for the experiences that you're having. I feel like we're having a mini masterclass here. And I want to stay in the workplace realm. And I'm kind of putting myself in the shoes of perhaps listening to our podcast today. We might have an executive director of an organization. And I think about, how we as employers what can we do in the workplace for our teams? I think our leaders feel this responsibility strongly. They want to create an environment that, even though it's dealing with hard things, isn't burning people out. Like, what is the approach? What do you recommend to folks who might be wearing that hat?
Well, the first and foremost is that we really can't fake it. We have to make this important to ourselves in order for it to disseminate into our organizations. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is that, and I work with a lot of leaders of different organizations, and I'm seeing a lot of stressed people.
Yeah, I bet.
And so what I'm
you are
saying is stress about the things that they know they're going to have to ask their own communities to deal with. Mm-hmm. And so really, really working it so that we calm down, so that we activate these simple practices as leaders, and really act. So what I suggest to people is every day to calm and soothe their nervous system, and then activate positive manifestation, meaning like, okay, don't, and it's like the civil rights movement. Keep your eyes on the prize. Don't get so caught up in what's happening that you lose sight of the prize beyond it. So if we as leaders can do that, then it's a lot easier for it to disseminate into our groups. And people begin to notice. People begin to notice if we seem calmer and seem like more self-assured. And then from there, putting that out into the community where, and by the way, this is so cost effective. These, if you get people working these tools, it's one of the most inexpensive ways to really support our community's quality of life. So, as we're going through this, it's like going through a hard drive. Even if you're going through, like you say, you have to drive a long way and you're going to really have to put your car through the paces. It's going to go a lot better for your vehicle if you make sure that you had an oil change and you make sure you have enough oil.
Yeah. Great example.
Yes. So, setting things up, it's really helpful to really begin, you can, creating a connection and community and this can happen on Zoom, for instance, these sort of healing circles where you practice these skills on a regular basis. At least, it works best at least once a week, but I mean, it can happen, every couple of weeks or once a month, where you're helping people to reignite with these practices. They're very, very subtle, but they're very effective. The challenge is I guarantee you they work. The problem is that can you get people to do the work to make them work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think sticking with these tools and giving them the chance to make an impact it's an investment we can make in ourselves. And I love that feeling that when things feel out of control, these are the things we can control.
And the great thing about this tool is that you're giving tools to people that are simple tools. These are so simple tools that they can bring home to their families and help things go better in their families just because they're activating these tools. Like they're games, like the gratitude game. It's something that you can activate in a that creates a cohesive workplace, but also really does good in the family. So these tools end up making a big difference. And like you said, I think there's a lot of leaders of organizations who know that their teams are under a lot of duress right now, and this is one of the best ways that you can support people and show that you care.
I love that. And when we invest and show that we care about an environment that is thoughtful in this way and leave space for self-care and well-being, it really defines who we are as a team, and it really shows what our values are and how we value each other. Yeah, that's very meaningful.
Yes. Well, and excuse me, I'm getting a sinus headache. One of the things I want to also bring up is, what we're really looking for is really upping our level of resilience. I mean, that's part of it is people are feeling worn out.
Yeah.
And so we really need to up our level of resilience. And, it's very interesting. Words are powerful. The word resilience, the prefix means to do again. The word resilience actually means to notice excellence that other people miss. So to be resilient is to notice excellence that other people miss on a regular basis. And so that means like seeing beauty. That means like really being in the moment. Resilience is essentially mindfulness. And essentially that's what we do is create a situation where people balance the inner and the outer world by becoming more mindful so that they can balance all that negativity.
Well, I think you've just discovered what the title for our conversation today should be about the how to get to resilience through mindful practices, and because I think ultimately that is the goal right now, right? It's like we are attempting to be resilient in ways that help us thrive. It's been such a great conversation with you, Drake. As we wrap up, I would love to hear what's next for you and your practice. And can you tell us just briefly a little bit more about your work with the community?
Well, yes. Our organizations, which is Skelegans LLC, it's which really just is my name is the sort of figurehead of it. Is we work with the state. We work. Doing with contracts with the Minnesota Department of Health. For instance, we do a class on agelessness on Tuesdays at 1:00 that we do on Zoom. So if anyone's interested, they can contact me on that, which is about developing a different relationship to aging. I also have a YouTube channel, which is called Touching the Edge. And there's over 700 videos up there, all very short. And so, and right now we're doing a series on that video channel called Coffee with Drake. So, I'm just on there every day. I put up a video. Today's video was Falling in Love, which was talking about falling in love with today, not a hypothetical day, but today. And so, all these things are very, very short to just give, just a little burst of positivity and also a reframing. It's like it's like aging. It's like I step out of the shower, I look in the mirror, and I'm like, could be worse. It's like it's it's like finding a way in the situation that we're in, not hiding from it, but recognizing that there's something about it that we're actually becoming better as a result of.
Oh my gosh. Well, now you've just helped me find my new morning routine. Could be worse.
And please check out those videos. I really want to, what I'm working to do is create healing circles in the community. I really feel that we need community. And so please check out those videos, Touching the Edge, every day. Come have a cup of coffee with me.
I love it. Oh, well, it's been such a pleasure. And I'm glad we got to end on a high, funny note. That was great. Thank you, Drake, for your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
And the conversation with the MACC Network. It's been such an important discussion. And thanks also to the sponsors of our Workforce podcast, the Ameriprise and Schultz Foundations. Listeners, we appreciate you too. And please don't miss MACC's monthly podcast downloads, where we talk to interesting people about things that matter to our network. We're on the Podbean platform now. Find us there. And you can also find these podcasts, the links directly on MACC's website as well. So thank you all. Have a great day and be well. Goodbye.